Hi. Once again, we're going to go ahead and have a little devotion here from the book of James again. And by the way, I've already recorded the video for tomorrow as well, also from the book of James, chapter 1. And I'm going to do the same verse again. There's more things that can be said here. And we're still talking about wisdom in trials then, and the need for wisdom in prayer. And so, if any of you in trial lacks wisdom, and we might say in all circumstances, but in trial lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given to him. But let him ask in faith with no doubting. For the one who doubts is like the wave of the sea that is driven and tossed by the wind. For that person must not suppose that he will receive anything from the Lord. He is double-minded, unstable in all his ways. We looked at this a little bit yesterday, and I just wanted to stay with it, actually. Again, we're called to seek God for wisdom. And what this passage is doing here is telling us, it really, if you think about it, what it is, it's a call to true faith. And thus to really examine ourselves as to whether or not we're really trusting God. He says, pray without doubting. All right. So let him ask in faith. I think the text says. I pulled up the side here. It says, let him ask, who gives generously to all, without reproach. But let him ask in faith. Okay. And then its opposite is this thing called doubting, which we may simply define as a kind of really unbelief, a duplicity in our hearts when we come to God, praying but not really believing. We can't have that. So this passage is telling us to truly trust God. So says Blomberg again. I quoted him yesterday, one of the commentators. He says, rather than pretending we know God's will in perplexing situations, therefore James teaches us to be sure of, like this, whom we are trusting for the answers to our questions. We cannot be wavering between two masters. This implies trusting God and not depending on our possessions to, quote, get us through, close quote. He goes on to say, most of us turn to God only when we have exhausted every option. The vacillation portrayed here recalls the ancient Jewish genre of the two ways literature. Now, then he quotes here, recites the Matthew 7. There's two ways, right? There's two roads. The wide and broad path to destruction, narrow path to life, Jesus gives. There's a wise man and a foolish man. One builds his house on the rock, the other on the sand. So there's two ways. That's part and parcel of ancient Jewish literature. And he's saying here that this vacillation reflects actually these two ways. It's much more serious, and I'm just got a little doubt in my head. But it could be we're actually reflecting unbelief in God. So, God does generously give. He does generously give even if we don't pray, because he's generous. God graciously gives us many good things, says Blomberg, even when we do not ask him or fail to persist in asking or ask with wrong motives. And he says this, the world would be bleak indeed if this were not the case. Wow, he's right there. Imagine if the world's and the blessings of grace were actually fully dependent on our pure prayers, on the intensity of our prayers, the purity of our prayers, the length and duration of our prayers. God gives well beyond our prayers. Praise God. He says, it would be bleak indeed if this were not the case. But there may be many other good things we are missing out on because we do not take the time to pray even more. I think it's a legitimate point and application for us. And maybe the reason why we don't pray more is our faith is just so weak and small, and our confidence How about this thought? Most of us turn to God only when we've exhausted every other option. Is that duplicity? Yes. Is that vacillation? Yes, we're going over here first. And here didn't solve the problem. Now we're right to God. Well, hey, at least we're going to God, you know. Got there the wrong way and the long way. Should have been the first thing and every step of the way, right? But true faith is what we're being called to. So, brothers and sisters, whom are you trusting? That's the whole point. Whom are you trusting? I like how he put it. I want to say it again. He says, rather than pretending that we know God's will in perplexing situations, which we often don't. Therefore, James teaches us to be sure of whom we are trusting for the answers to our questions. So that's the point. Who are you and I trusting for the answers to our questions in perplexing situations? The answer should be God and God alone. That doesn't mean God doesn't use doctors and experts and lawyers, which are experts and pastors to give wisdom and all kinds of this, right? That's all falls within the purview of how God will deliver wisdom to us. But still, though, they're not our trust. He's our trust. He may use them, but he's our trust. O Lord in heaven, true faith, I come to you, you alone, for the wisdom I need in this difficult and perplexing situation, Father, and I trust that you will provide, and trust myself to your answer, to your care. And as I was thinking about this, I kept thinking of that hymn, God will take care of you. We need to trust our lives to God. God will take care of you through all the way or all the day, right? I remember, I'll put that in the sermon this I remember. Anyway. So, tomorrow's lesson will also be on James, but it'll be different. I want to talk about the sermon, what I'm going to be preaching in the sermon, actually, for the next text, which is also James chapter 1, 12 through 18. And so I wanted to get a bunch of questions, get our minds going on that text before we actually receive it. I explained it in the video already tomorrow. So anyway, good to be with you today. A little shorter video, but you know, we preachers, we can be a little bit long-winded. You know the old saying, a bunch of hot air. That's not true, but long-winded, that could be true. Anyway, have a good day.